Alright guys, it is now or never in terms of a garden tour. So I figured I'll pop out here while the kids are distracted and everyone's in a good place and show you what the garden looks like early or mid-July. So front garden, first let's start with the lawn, which is looking mighty green considering the drought we've been experiencing for the past month and a half or so. Past couple of weeks though, we finally got some rain, so shout out to the rain. So very thankful. It's so funny because the drought was so severe. Let me turn around slowly and show you. So there's a stop sign in the corner of my lawn here, but the drought was so severe that there was a reflection, or the glare from the sun was hitting the stop sign, and it literally burnt an impression of the stop sign in the lawn. It's finally greened up, but that was interesting. Anyway, so here's the front foundation garden bed. I'm starting here with some Coravinca. There's a Camellia japonica and what it looks like in the middle of the summer. It's an evergreen plant. Flowers in the springtime, or excuse me, late winter, early spring. But that's what it looks like year round. Annual flowers again is Coravinca. This is actually my favorite plant on the entire property. Don't tell the rest of the plants. It's a hydrangea, Paniculata hydrangea, Bobo. It is full grown. If I were to stand next to it, it'll probably come a little bit, almost to my shoulder, and I'm about 5'7". So that's its full height. It's a little flopped over now because of the rain. I would say that these have pretty strong and sturdy stems. So I'm going to get up in here and show you how thick the trunk of some of these limbs are. And you can see what's flopped, the limbs that are smaller, not as thick. I cut this back down by about a third every year. I cut it down a little bit more severely last time around, which was done around, I typically try to aim for Valentine's Day, President's Day in my zone. So that's when I cut this down, and I cut it down kind of lower than I typically did, and I think that's the main reason why I've got some flopping here. But honestly, like, I will get a string, some twine, and some stakes and tie those blooms up. I'll probably do that in a video so you can see how I would address that. More Coravinca. The purple bushes in the background are purple diamond Laura Petulums. They get about 4 foot high height, 4 foot wide. There is a window box back here that's struggling, and I can't quite pinpoint why. In this window box, I have impatiens, and the blue foliage is, what is that called? Blue spruce sedum, and I think it's too much water. Like I said, we've had consistent heavy rains for the past couple of weeks. The potting mix in that container is a mixture of compost and regular potting soil. And my thought for that was compost retains a little bit more moisture. Hopefully that would mean I would have to water less, especially something like impatiens. This garden bed is on the north side of my home, so which is tricky in the south because mainly throughout the year on the north side of your home you don't get a lot of sun, but in the south right around this time of year this whole bed cooks. So long story short, I put compost in that pot thinking it would help save me on watering, but I think it may be actually what's doing those impatiens in, which is fine. I mean, an excuse to get some more plants and put in there. Like, I got those from Lowe's. They were like little 6-pack of impatiens. I think like $4 or so for a 6-pack. So hey, I'll just refresh them. This cute little fluffy bush is a dragon prince cryptomeria. This is also about full size. It may get about a foot higher than that. It was such an itty bitty thing when I planted it 3 years ago, but it puts on so much growth every year, and I literally do nothing to it, which is awesome. I recently planted some butterfly bushes. These are buzz raspberry. I've got 4 of them dotted throughout. It's a section with a climbing rose, which I always struggle with. I mean, I've got a rose on the north side of my house. These like full sun. So I'm definitely not giving it its ideal conditions, but you can see I've got some color there, and we'll try it. We'll see how it does maybe one more year, and if it doesn't perform like I need it to, I'll probably place this in an area that gets full sun instead, and plant something like a clematis up that trellis. Here's the bed at a backed up view. Again, this is the foundation garden going to my home. More Coravinca. I designed this bed so that I had pockets for annuals. Here is the reason why I cut down that other hydrangea so severely last spring, because these four are, 5 actually. 5 Bobo hydrangeas are actually a little bit younger than the one on the right. So I wanted to try to match their growth habit. It didn't really work, which is fine. They'll all catch up eventually. But there was no need to cut down that one as severely, because despite my efforts, it still way outgrew these 5. But you can see the one back in the corner is all budded up, ready to bloom. And then this one is further along. The 2 in the front, not as many buds this year. We'll continue to watch that and see how it goes. And you may wonder what that empty space is. I actually had a plant there once upon a time. But I didn't like the growth habit in its position. So what I've done is left that space empty for a fountain. I've been eyeing a few. I said I would sit with it blank for the season to see if I still want to make that investment. And I'm pretty dead set on getting it now that I've had it blank and can envision it there. Behind it is a hosta that was glorious in early spring, but you can kind of see what I mean when I say the sun shifts the position in the sky. And now that this bed is exposed to more of the sun, I've got some scorching happening, which is fine. It's fine. This is a tough plant. It'll definitely rebound come next year, and I may wind up transplanting it, but we'll see what happens once I put the fountain in this space, because it may provide just enough protection to keep that from scorching. Another annual bed. If I were to scroll up some, you can see where it is in relation to the house. Tucked in there is another butterfly bush that I recently planted. And the entry to my house, which, look at these poor little trees. Bless their hearts. They've given me such great performance here. But man, that lack of rain for that long extended period of time did these babies in. So what I did was I went through and I removed all of the dead out of it. Everything that was scorched and burnt, which is why they look so sparse. And they're actually regrowing. Let me get closer so I can show you. Like, the new growth is pushing through. Here it is at the top. But evergreens, as a rule of thumb, take a very long time to rebound. And because of that, these will probably be replaced for something similar. So going back down the steps, the bed that I'm looking at here is the garden space right off the lawn. Everything's doing great. These are white wedding hydrangeas, another type of Paniculata hydrangea. This isn't flopping. See how this lopsided? The left side of this bush was sampled by a deer. Yes, I deal with deer. And it got me before I had a chance to spray these very early on in the season. So I'm stuck with that little lopsided bush, but that's fine. They bloom on new growth. It will grow back in next year and be, you wouldn't know it even happened. So yeah, those are all Panicle white wedding hydrangeas, Southern Living Plant Collection plant. I love the big white formal fluffy blooms on this particular Panicle hydrangea. It just glows in the nighttime, which is why they are the anchor plants in this space. As you can see, it's heavily shaded. So that gives me some color contrast to the dark shade, the white flowers. Looks good at night too. The theme of this garden as a whole is green and white. Try to keep it very subdued. I do plan on having some blue flowers in this space. As a matter of fact, this little grouping of plants here. There are 9. These are actually hydrangeas as well. Can you tell that I love hydrangeas? These are newly planted this spring. This is a Macrophylla, or big leaf hydrangea. They prefer more shade than the panicle types. They have the smooth, they call them mop head blooms. They're kind of round, golf ball looking type blooms. They're the ones where the color of the flowers are dependent on the pH of the soil. So here in Georgia, my soil, the red clay, is more acidic, which means that our flowers tend to be blue or purple. In more alkaline soils, macrophyllas will present pink flowers typically. And you can change that through different amendments. But long story short, these are 9 Let's Dance Blue Jangles Macrophylla hydrangeas from Proven Winners. They get about 1 foot high, 1 to 2 foot high, 1 to 2 foot wide. So they should create a nice little mass planting of blue blooms in spring and summer starting next year. Usually, can't judge a plant by the first year in the ground. So I've got a lot of leaves. I actually had a couple of blooms here and there. But as a whole, it's just greenery. Focus on root establishment. Keep them alive. Keep them alive. Another white wedding. And here on the corner, I've actually got a Panicle Hydrangea, which I'm surprised at how well it blooms in sun. So this is the west side of my house, but again, lots of shade cover, trees from the trees, lots of trees. So despite that, this still blooms and looks great. I actually like the airy look of it. It probably would be more flowers and more sun, but I'm perfectly okay with the way that it's presenting. This is a staple in terms of panicles. It's an oldie but goodie. Love it. Also, another cool thing about this particular hydrangea is that it has the open petals, so the bees can actually get in to those pieces and get pollen. A lot of the other hydrangeas, like this one, the florets are so tight that there really isn't a pollen source for the pollinators. But Pinky Winky, bees, and everything loves it. I've got a couple little sad annual spaces and some gaps in mulch. The water pools there, so that happens. Yeah, it's sad. I'm still trying to figure out what to do on the border of this bed. It would have to be something that prefers part sun and part shade, and preferably a perennial, so I don't have to keep replanting things. Miss Lemonabilia, it actually flowered, surprisingly, considering all of the shade that it's in. This one looks really sad. I actually broke it when I planted it, but it's still alive, so that's why I'm leaving it there. A repeat of that annual. This space, that one actually looks a bit better, but still, I'm still trying to figure out what to put there. So yeah, mailbox garden from a distance. That tree that is all budded up and the beginning stages of bloom is a Crepe Myrtle. I don't know the variety, but it is a pink bloomer. I actually have some plans on that space, so I'll be redoing it soon and probably shooting a video accordingly. It's a really pretty view, minus the trash cans in the background. It's another Crepe Myrtle, further along in bloom, and I've actually taken the time and kind of pruned that one up. So it's got a much better structure than the mailbox one. You know, a little bit at a time. I'll get to that mailbox one eventually, but I love this tree. It's a great tree. Great tree. No, I do not commit crepe murder, as some people call it, at least not anymore. When I first moved in this space, I did chop them down, just taking cues from my neighbors and thinking that that's what was needed. But the more I learned about them, the more I realized that's not necessary. They do bloom on new wood, so if you were to chop it down, you know, you would still get blooms. It's kind of impossible to kill these things. They sucker everywhere. But you keep chopping them down and you miss out on that gorgeous structure. So once I learned that, I stopped doing the crepe murder. But I don't judge. It's your yard. Do what you want to do. All right. Here's another garden space. This is off of the driveway, affectionately called the birthday garden. Everything looking pretty good. My roses need to be deadheaded. This is a sweet drift landscape rose. great plant. Very low maintenance. I deadheaded just to clean it up some, but it's not necessary. It will still rebloom. My salvia is currently out of bloom, but that's okay. That's what perennials do, right? They come in and out of bloom depending on the time of the season, which is why I encourage you to plan your space according to that, understanding that everything will not be in peak at all times. Annuals are a great way to fill the gap in between bloom cycles. Speaking of being in between bloom cycles, you can see this Panicle Hydrangea is all budded up and about to bloom. This is Firelight Tidbit. That is about its full size, the perfect little backdrop to this garden bed. They are newly planted this year, so it's the first time I'll see them bloom. So I'm happy with the progress so far. This plant has been fun. This is a Grand Cascade Lilac butterfly bush. The pollinators absolutely love it. It is also its first year in the ground. Speaking of which, let's talk about all the stuff I did this year, which was amazing, right? Here's another space full of brand new hydrangeas that were planted, and a lot went in the ground this year for the first time. And while I'm very happy with how it looks, it was an unforeseen maintenance, I won't call a nightmare, but just keep in mind, you plant a bunch of stuff the first year, you got a bunch of stuff to try to babysit that first year. So everything that you see that I'm mentioning, oh, it's his first year in the ground, I definitely have been watering them religiously during these periods of drought to keep them alive. And so far, not many casualties, but I have had a couple. Coming up on one now. This is a hedge of Pinkerella hydrangeas, Arborescens, smooth type, Annabelle type. They also bloom on new wood in the south. They need a little protection from the sun, I think, because I've watched these droop and scorch as they enter full sun, but they're supposed to be able to handle more sun than, say, a macrophylla. But yeah, I planted 5, and that one bit the dust. I was just checking it today. It was push and grow for a minute, but yeah, it died. And it's interesting. What killed it was overwatering. Yep. This clay soil, you have to be mindful that you're basically digging a clay pot. So unless you're doing something to improve the drainage, understand that water could just be settling. And it's interesting because I didn't have that issue in any other place, but that one pocket had heavier clay, the water settled, and I wound up drowning that plant to death. I overloved it. I'm going to leave it there, though, because I would love to see a miracle and it popped back up, because I do want that hedge to be what I initially envisioned it, and I don't want to have to go through the hassle of hunting down another Pinkerella in the appropriate size, although I'm not opposed to doing that. But before I go that route, I'm going to leave that there and see what it does. It doesn't cost me anything to leave it there. I don't have a replacement, so let's just see what it does. This backyard space is still very much a work in progress. I laid this wood path beginning last year. When I say I mean me and my family. We did some manually. We outsourced some as well. Free wood chips from a local arborist. So the path is new, but the garden beds still need to be, properly defined, both here, there, and all along the border. And trust that this will be a very packed out woodland garden when it's all said and done. But before I go there, I've got to do some tree removal. I've got just some useless trees in here, some that are dead, some that are just too weedy. They spit seeds like crazy. And as beautiful as they are, as lovely as they are for their native capabilities, they're native to the area, I just don't want them here. So I've got some trees to clean out before I finish up developing this space. So more to come there. I'll be taking y'all along for the journey. But here is a garden space that has come a long way since this time last year. So let's see where to begin. That poor little container. I don't know what's wrong with it. This whole little pocket. I don't know if it's a pest issue because I've got this gar here that just won't bloom like it should. I've got Salvia greggii that's also just looking kind of rough, some yellowing leaves. I don't know if it's lack of water. It can't be too much water. These are typically very tough plants, drought tolerant. They don't like a lot of fertilizer, but I think they may need some. So yeah, but what has me concerned is that this container too is also struggling. So I'm like, is it a pest thing? I don't know. Here are some plants that I did from seed. Yay, look at that gomphrena is looking fantastic all throughout. Just really starting to put on its show in terms of blooms. So it is a gorgeous plant. They dry very well too. Down below is some salvia. This is summer jewel salvia. The pollinators love it. I typically always have a hummingbird on this plant. The pink annuals I just cut back. Those are bubblegum supertunias. Supertunia vista to be exact. The hedge of arborvitae is alive, and that is all that I can really focus on. But no, they actually are putting on growth. They've kind of beefed out, gotten wider. There is a hedge of firelight Panicle Hydrangeas here with very few blooms. I think I planted 5 here. I'm actually looking for a 6th one, and out of those 6 plants I've got like 6 flowers. But again, first year in the ground, you can't really judge a plant. That bobo that I love so much gave me 3 flowers the first year I put it in the ground, and now it is covered. So yeah. Everything here was newly planted this year, so everything here I have been babysitting and watering like crazy. Well worth it. These tall spires in the back are, what are these? Purple pillar Rose of Sharons. They are all budded up, ready to bloom. I actually cannot wait for them to put on the show. This is their 2nd year in the ground, so I'm hoping to get so many more blooms than I did last year, but look at all those buds. Can you see? Let me can I focus? Yeah. You know, you guys, I'm a total noob when it comes to video recording, so I shall get better in terms of the proper settings and lighting and things like that. So bear with me, but hopefully this has been fun and informative and just relaxing, right? So yeah, that's the purple pillar. Look at this guy though. This is a phantom Paniculata hydrangea. This is another one that has the flower parts that the pollinators are able to get into. And when I tell you this thing is covered, I wasn't quite expecting that. We barbecue right above the deck. So far it's been fine, but I have been mindful of what I put close to the deck, knowing that, you know, there are lots of smells and sweet stuff coming from this area. I don't necessarily want to distract the bees, but they've been fine. They've been ignoring me and loving their lives on this plant. First year in the ground, but look at it, okay? And it was a very tall specimen before I even planted it, but it's doing its thing. Down below are some plumbago bushes, which I'm troweling for the first time this year. I love the flowers on them. This is kind of a part sun area, and they prefer full sun, so I think it would flower more if I had it in more sun, but we'll see. We'll see what it does next year. If it's still kind of sparse, I'll move it. Beautiful blue flowers. Up next is a variegated dogwood bush. I think the mature height on this is like a 5x5, maybe 6x6. Beautiful variegated leaves that really pop in a shady spot, but what I'm excited about is the stem color. See how that red's coming in? That just really started developing the last few weeks. So what's supposed to happen is in the fall, when this loses its leaves, those stems are supposed to really be the star of the show all throughout the winter garden, the red stems. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see what's over here. Okay, this area is interesting. So what I tried to do was I don't know. I was going for yellow and blue, and you know, it worked, but maybe not the growth habit worked together. So this is Blew My Mind Evolvulus, Morning Glory. Different type of Morning Glory than the seedy one. This is actually perennial here. And I haven't seen that listed anywhere, but I planted this last year and it came back. These are sunflowers. I think these are no, it's not Suncredible. I think it's Sunfinity. Either way, it's one of those branching sunflowers. So you get a stem and multiple flowers. Now this thing is a Ruella or Mexican Petunia. The flowers are interesting. They look like petunias. They're blue, but I don't get very many of them. And I can tell that this is a beast. I can tell that it spreads by rhizome, which is fine, except that I don't necessarily want to be stuck with that plant here forever. So I'll probably be digging those 3 up and putting them in a container. I think that'll be very striking, that height, and when it blooms, that flower. So there are 3 here. Clustered in a small container will make more of a presence, I think, than the way I've got them planted here. And then in between all of this is a very sad looking butterfly bush. You can barely see it. This is a Asian blue moon butterfly bush. I'm going to move it. It does not look happy. Then I've got a container of annuals back there, which is giving me more green foliage than I prefer. That's supposed to be like a flower power container, but it's not doing that, but that's okay too. All right, lastly is the area that I've been seeding, so direct sowing. And let's see what we got. Got some basil, which looks fantastic. I've been harvesting it really just to smell it because it smells so good. I've got some marigolds that I direct seeded next to it. These were done very early on in the season. Here I seeded zinnias and marigolds. I've got like 5 zinnias. I think a rabbit did that. This is fun. These are peanuts. Haha. So they are not your roasted peanuts from the store. These are actual seed peanuts from a garden center. I've heard that you can buy the squirrel feed peanuts and they will grow. But they are so easy. Crack them in half, put them in the soil. 4 or 5 days later, you've got growth. So I'll be giving you updates on these. I love peanuts. So I'm hoping to get a interesting harvest. I've got more things in here that are barely peeking through. There are some asters there. Those are all cosmos. Those are all zinnias. And then I've got a pepper patch right here. And oh, how can I forget? I've got Seminole pumpkins. 1, 2, 3. And there's a 4th one around here. There it is. It's back there. So I'm excited about that. My last pumpkin attempt was destroyed by squash vine borers. I'm sure those who have attempted pumpkins know my pain, but I've heard that these are resistant, so we'll be trying it out. So all right, I hope you guys enjoyed. I know that was one continuous take, but I'm hoping that it was informative and if nothing else, relaxing. So enjoy the rest of your week and happy gardening.